Right, now I have the pleasure of introducing Reverend Bonnie Evan-Hills, a fellow colleague on the UK Women of Faith Network Coordinating Committee. Bonnie is a priest in the Scottish Episcopal Church and has considerable experience in interreligious dialogue, working with organisations such as the EU Commission on Foreign Affairs and Security, the World Council of Churches, Churches Together in Britain and Ireland, the Anglican Communion, and the Anglican Mission Organisation USPG. Bonnie has been involved in contributing to the UN Office for the Prevention of Genocide's Global Plan of Action for Religious Leaders and Actors. Alongside several other publications, Bonnie is co-author of the book Engaging Islam from a Christian Perspective, published by Peter Lang. She was recently awarded the Hubert Walter Award for Reconciliation and Interfaith Cooperation by the Archbishop of Canterbury. Bonnie, please.
Oh gosh, just ignore all that. What an honour it is to be up here and to be asked to speak and to share the platform with the Right Honourable Christine McKelvey and Ravinda and Jenny and all of you here. So thank you for being here and thank you for listening ahead of time. So last July, the UK hosted an International Ministerial of Freedom of Religion or Belief, with national representatives from all over the world. Now, freedom of religion or belief sounds an excellent agenda for leaders of religion and belief to collaborate with governments. And for the most part, I would agree, but that agreement comes with a caution. Freedom of religion or belief is one article in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, none of which were intended to be separated out. They are meant to function in balance. And sadly, there have been some elements among our more conservative colleagues who have sought to use freedom of religion or belief as a means of justifying continued exclusion of certain groups, to do with gender, race, sexuality, or even other religions, or those within their own tradition but who hold differing views. All freedoms come with responsibility. To ensure the rights of others are not negatively affected by our actions. We are free to believe what we like, but not to act or express it in a way that would adversely affect the lives and rights of others. So while this engagement with freedom of religion or belief sounds basically good, it must come with this caution. Shortly following this ministerial, I was in Fez, Morocco, attending a UN conference with the Office for Prevention of Genocide. And we heard that a statement on gender by the ministerial had been greatly altered. This statement had originally included a commitment to the repeal of any laws that allow harmful practices or restrict women's and girls' sexual and reproductive health and rights, bodily autonomy. But after the ministerial had concluded, this portion was unilaterally altered by the UK Westminster government without consultation from other signatories. The statement had originally had 22 signatories. A number of them pulled out amid much controversy, and the number of signatories was reduced to 8. To this date, no individual minister in Westminster has taken responsibility for that change, despite continued challenge and questioning. There are sexual health clinics, places where women go for treatment of various health issues, including infections, infertility, rape and sexual abuse, female genital mutilation, and, oh yes, abortion. But women entering clinics are subjected to abuse by those claiming to be praying for them. Is this what freedom of religion or belief is supposed to be about? No. The end result of these actions is curtailing of access to medical treatment and a huge loss of dignity for those seeking help. There's a living memory where I grew up in the United States of segregation. And even more recently for those where there has been apartheid, such as in South Africa. What this meant was that those who had darker skin were barred from attending certain schools or even getting an education. They couldn't go certain places, couldn't go to restaurants or concerts or shops. They couldn't ride the bus or even use certain drinking fountains for water. Racism still exists. I must acknowledge that my own skin color has given me and continues to give certain advantages. But at the same time, there are places I am not allowed to go, things I can't participate in because I am a woman. Now, while there has been good intention behind providing special programs for women and young people, the question does need to be asked: how to empower excluded groups without adding to that exclusion? Because sometimes in setting up these programs, we are still setting people aside, keeping them out of the main agenda in the name of empowering them. In one of my former churches, a group of us listened to a young teenager explain that she wanted to be part of the church because she wanted to be part of a community. She didn't want to be set aside in a group called youth. She wanted to be part of a wider community, to worship together and not to be sent out, to be separated. A number of indigenous cultures throughout the world, and I would say here in Scotland, include all. Old and young, women and men, in their ceremonies, in their storytelling, in their day-to-day activities of growing food, agriculture, or hunting on the land, going out to sea, in the arts, in their sharing of songs. The generations, women and men, old and young, come together. There's a rhetoric that justifies education of women and girls because they are the ones who raise the next generation. But no, children are not raised alone by a woman alone in the house. It takes a village, a community, men and women together, old and young together, to raise one child. During the 2016 UN World Humanitarian Summit, the importance of including women and young people at all levels was repeatedly emphasized. Both are the most vulnerable to exploitation and conflict. Women are sexually exploited, and young people are not only subject to similar exploitation, but also sold into slave labor or forced into being child soldiers. But it is women who ensure a community is fed, clothed, and housed, that they receive medical assistance, and young people tend to be the first to volunteer in any crisis. Their inclusion means that health, financial well-being, and education improves. Don't include women, and this doesn't happen. For men and women alike. It's not that women have all the answers. We don't. Honestly, we don't. But rather that together, sharing perspectives, we just might. There are places in the world, we know, where women and girls are not only blocked from access to education, but from leaving their own homes in freedom. Or they're expected to wear certain items of clothing, and it's all too easy to point to these places and feel good about the freedoms that exist elsewhere. But the thin end of the wedge to the eradication of those freedoms that we enjoy so far are in those cases, such as mentioned earlier, where our own governments remove calls for access to sexual and reproductive rights and bodily autonomy. I'll end there.